The Supreme Court is poised to make a decision in a case that could have far-reaching consequences for the very foundation of American government. At the heart of the matter is the question of presidential power, specifically how much authority the president should have when it comes to shaping the nation's international trade policies. This pivotal case brings together a series of legal challenges from businesses across the country, all contesting the tariffs imposed by the Trump administration on steel and aluminum imports. The stakes are high, not only for the cost of these essential materials, but for the very principle of separation of powers. The central issue: should the president have the unilateral power to reshape economic policy, or does the Constitution require Congress to take the lead in such matters? The tariffs in question were enacted under Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act and the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, sparking years of economic disruption and a wave of lawsuits from affected industries. Now, the Supreme Court must weigh whether the executive branch exceeded its constitutional authority. The justices will consider the delicate balance between the president's need for flexibility in foreign affairs and Congress's explicit power to regulate commerce with other nations. The outcome of this case will not only determine the fate of these specific tariffs, but will also shape the future of American trade law and redefine the balance of power between the White House and Congress for years to come. Across the country, businesses large and small are anxiously awaiting the court's decision. The uncertainty has rippled through supply chains, affected global trade relationships, and left many wondering how future presidents might wield their power. The justices now face a profound question. Was the use of executive power in this instance a necessary response to national security concerns, or did it cross the line into unconstitutional overreach? Whatever the outcome, the court's ruling will set a powerful precedent, influencing not just today's trade policies, but the very structure of American government for generations to come. The legal fight began after years of mounting frustration among American businesses hit by tariffs. Across the country, business owners watched as their costs rose and their competitiveness declined, feeling powerless as new trade barriers disrupted the flow of goods and materials they relied on. Many felt their voices were being drowned out in the political debate, with little recourse as their livelihoods were threatened. The Trump administration, citing national security, used Section 232 and IEEPA to impose sweeping tariffs on steel, aluminum, and a wide range of goods from China. These measures were presented as a way to protect American industries and jobs, but the sudden shift sent shockwaves through the business community, leaving many scrambling to adapt. This marked a sharp break from decades of free trade policy. For years, the United States had championed open markets and global cooperation, forging trade agreements that encouraged economic growth and international partnerships. The new tariffs signaled a dramatic reversal, raising questions about the future of American trade. Companies, large and small, faced soaring costs, disrupted operations, and shrinking profits. Many small businesses, already operating on thin margins, struggled to absorb the increased expenses. Some were forced to lay off workers, delay investments, or even close their doors, while larger corporations warned of long-term damage to their supply chains and global competitiveness. Many argued the tariffs hurt American businesses more than they helped. Industry groups and trade associations organized press conferences and protests, urging policymakers to reconsider. They pointed to lost contracts, declining exports, and the risk of retaliation from trading partners as evidence that the policy was backfiring. With no relief from policymakers, these businesses turned to the courts, claiming the president exceeded congressional authority. Legal teams assembled, determined to challenge what they saw as an overreach of executive power. They argued that national emergency was being stretched beyond meaning, and that only Congress can impose taxes. The lawsuits questioned whether the president could unilaterally reshape trade policy and levy tariffs without explicit legislative approval, raising fundamental constitutional issues. Lawsuits filed in the Court of International Trade set off a long legal journey, challenging the president's expansive tariff powers. The cases drew national attention as businesses, legal scholars, and policymakers debated the limits of executive authority in matters of trade and taxation. The core grievance: The executive was unilaterally imposing taxes, violating the Constitution. Protesters and legal experts alike argued that such actions undermined the balance of power and threatened the foundational principles of American democracy. This consolidated case now before the Supreme Court is the culmination of that fight. The outcome will not only determine the fate of these tariffs, but could also reshape the boundaries of presidential power for years to come. The plaintiffs argue the president misused Section 232 and IEEPA, turning targeted security tools into broad economic weapons. They claim national security was applied too broadly, justifying a trade war rather than addressing real threats. The use of IEEPA, they say, dangerously expands executive power, letting the president declare emergencies over trade deficits and bypass Congress. Their case rests on the non-delegation doctrine. Congress can't hand over its core powers without clear limits. They urge the court to restore Congress's role in trade policy and prevent unchecked executive authority. The government defends the tariffs as a lawful use of authority delegated by Congress. They argue Section 232 and IEEPA are intentionally broad, giving the president flexibility to protect national security and economic stability. The administration claims the health of industries like steel is vital for defense, and that trade deficits can be genuine emergencies. They point to historical precedent for broad executive action in foreign trade. Limiting this power, they warn, would weaken the U.S. on the world stage. The government downplays non-delegation concerns, insisting the statutes provide sufficient guidance. They ask the court to uphold the tariffs as essential executive tools. The tariffs' impact has been dramatic. Some U.S. steel and aluminum producers benefited, but many more businesses suffered. Manufacturers relying on imports faced soaring costs, forcing tough choices: absorb losses, raise prices, or cut jobs. Small and medium businesses, lacking leverage, struggled most, delaying investments and laying off workers. The uncertainty paralyzed long-term planning and forced companies to navigate complex regulations. Farmers were hit hard by retaliatory tariffs, losing key export markets and seeing prices plummet. Government aid offered little comfort compared to stable trade. The instability chilled investment and forced companies to rethink global supply chains, sometimes moving production abroad. For many, this Supreme Court case is the last hope for a return to predictability. The legal battle wound through the courts, with early rulings often deferring to presidential authority on national security. But as cases reached the federal circuit, judges questioned the limits of executive power. If trade deficits are emergencies, what isn't? Challenges attacked both procedural missteps and the broader constitutional issue of executive overreach. The Supreme Court's decision to hear the case signals its national importance and unresolved constitutional questions. Only a fraction of cases reach the court, underscoring the stakes. The justices now face the final word on years of contentious litigation. The outcome will clarify the boundaries of presidential power in trade. The Supreme Court could rule narrowly, striking down the tariffs on procedural grounds, but leaving presidential power intact. Or it could issue a sweeping decision, reviving the non-delegation doctrine and forcing Congress to reclaim its authority. Such a ruling would reshape the presidency's role in trade and beyond. The court might also uphold the tariffs, affirming broad executive discretion in national security and foreign commerce. Each outcome carries major consequences for businesses, Congress, and future presidents. Even a decisive ruling won't end the debate. Future laws or administrations could revisit these powers. The precedent set will echo through American politics and global trade. The core tension between free trade and protectionism will persist. The court's decision will shape U.S. trade policy and the balance of power for decades. Upholding broad executive authority would cement a major shift, letting presidents act unilaterally in economic crises. The case forces a re-examination of Cold War-era laws in today's global economy. The outcome could spur Congress to rewrite trade laws, setting clearer limits on presidential power. The ruling will send a message to allies and rivals about America's approach to global trade. Ultimately, this is a test of the constitutional system. Will the court endorse expanded executive power or reaffirm Congress's role? The implications reach to the heart of American democracy. In sum, the Supreme Court's review of the Trump tariffs marks a pivotal turning point for both constitutional law and the direction of American economic policy. This case is not just about tariffs. It's about the very foundation of how power is distributed among the branches of government. The legal battle began when businesses, deeply affected by the tariffs, stepped forward to challenge the president's authority to impose such sweeping economic measures without direct congressional approval. Many small business owners, importers, and workers have felt the impact firsthand, fueling the debate. Plaintiffs argue that the executive branch overstepped its constitutional boundaries, effectively usurping Congress's exclusive power to regulate trade and tariffs. They claim this sets a dangerous precedent for unchecked executive action. In response, the government staunchly defends the tariffs as both lawful and necessary, insisting that swift executive action is sometimes required to protect national interests and respond to global economic threats. The Supreme Court's decision will set a lasting precedent, not only for trade policy, but also for the separation of powers and the future scope of executive authority in the United States. The stakes in this case extend far beyond economics, reaching into the very structure of American governance and the delicate balance envisioned by the Constitution's framers. As the nation anxiously awaits the court's ruling, the central question remains unresolved. How much unilateral power should a president truly have over the nation's economic destiny, and where should the limits be drawn? The answer the Supreme Court provides will not only resolve this immediate dispute, but will also shape the contours of American law and policy for generations to come.